Good morning. My name is Amy Ferguson with Canines Unleashed Dog Training. I'm really excited to introduce to you today Lauren through Lauren Wingate, the Wingate Way, and she's an animal communicator. And I found her online. She popped up and she really intrigued me. And I started looking into her website and different things and watched a video or two that was on her website. And I thought, I've got to reach out to you, Lauren. I am so excited to talk to you. I think that what you do is fascinating. And so building the opportunity into a business that you have done for yourself, I'm really excited to hear more. If you can describe how you got into this business and created it for yourself. I know that you've done this for 25 plus years and you do it internationally. Just tell us a little bit what this journey was like for you.
Sure. So when I did start a little over 25 years ago, I remember the first hit I got, and I was with a couple of women who were doing Reiki work. And they did Reiki with animals, Reiki with people. And I thought, okay, I'd like to get to know them. And they said, oh, come along. We're going to this horse show. Great. So we go to the horse show and I'm watching it was a hunter jumper show. So I'm watching the riders and all of a sudden it was like listening to the radio, not kidding. And this horse just started talking to me. And I'm looking around, I'm not kidding. And I look at the ladies, I said, you guys, this horse is communicating with me. Well, and nonchalant, well, what's the horse saying? I said, well, and I didn't really know much about horses. It's so long ago. I said, well, he's saying that you haven't warmed me up enough. And I didn't even know what that meant. I mean, I knew for people warming up for exercise or an event for exercise, and that the left shoulder is really bothering the horse. And I'm just sitting there, not kidding. It was like dialing into a radio station without static. And that's how the whole thing started. So at that point, I didn't have a lot of confidence in it because I thought, oh gosh, this is super woo-woo. Way back then in particular, people weren't. Today, vernacular of the day is energy. Everybody's talking about energy. Well, not 25 years ago. That just wasn't part of life. So I had to kind of tiptoe with that for a while before I started really gaining the confidence of doing this and helping people and turning it into a profession.
Yes, absolutely. And as everyone's perception on this is probably varied greatly.
Yes. Without question,
yes.
Including the animals.
Yeah, you got to win them over too, right?
You do.
Right.
You do. Got to ask permission. Yeah.
That's right. So I would say, enlighten us a little bit. What would be a reason that someone would contact you? What's the main reason that someone would seek your professional services?
Right. So people reach out to me. I work with mostly horses and dogs.
Okay.
So they'll reach out if they're having some type of behavioral issue. And there's typically people who reach out to me, they know there's something kind of beyond. So I'm not necessarily having to convince them about the work that I do and the power of the work I do. We all have an inner knowing, and some people are more willing to listen to it than others. So they'll reach out to me, as I said, whether there's a behavioral issue or they just they're curious. They want to know what their animal is thinking. They also reach out to me for animals that have passed, and I'm able to communicate with them as well.
I think that's fascinating.
I think it's fascinating. I get out of the way for this to come through me. And every time I do a session with someone, I finish a session. Not so much these days, but it's like, wow, I don't make this stuff up.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is the reason that someone would want to contact you if their animal has already passed?
So what they're seeking is they want to know there's such a sense of loss and they're not finished with the relationship. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And most people aren't finished with the relationship. Maybe if the animal has lived an extremely long life, and there's peace around that, and they still want to connect. But the majority of the people who connect with me that want to find out what's going on with their animal that has passed, it's because they're not finished and they're in such deep mourning. And the key, and this is true for almost everyone, is that they're holding on to that moment of death. Mm. Mm. And that's a very powerful, difficult thing to hold on to, but there's so much more than that. And so there's a tremendous amount of ease and letting go.
That's not easy. You're right. And it's traumatic on people when they lose their animal, their pet.
Traumatic. So I tune in with the animal, but I'm also working with the energy of the people.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of energy of people, do you accept or decline people based on their energy when you are looking at people to work with?
I do not. I know that people in my profession or a similar profession say, oh, so-and-so, I got drained by them or whatever. And I am so clear. I'm very protected. I am very clear that, and have lived this, that I don't carry the energy of other people when I finish a conversation, or carry the energy of an animal. I just don't carry it. It's not mine to carry. I'm very clear about that.
I love that.
So, yeah. So when I get off the phone with someone or in person with someone, and there's difficulty with their energy, first of all, I'm trying to, I'll be honest with them and say, look, there's some things going on here, and here's what it is. And a lot of times when people hear that about themselves, hearing that truth actually moves and shifts energy, because the body, the heart knows when it hears truth. And you'll feel, and I'll tell you where the tingles are showing up, so to speak. And that's really a movement of energy. Mm-hmm. So I don't have an issue dealing with people who might have negative energy. The only time I have an issue, to be honest, is when they don't want to accept that that's why there's a problem with their animal.
Sure.
And then I feel like I'm a massive advocate for the animal, so I don't want to give up.
Correct. Yes, I understand that. Yes. And it's providing them with the information that they need to become aware of, and they have to be open-minded to accept it. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
You can't control people, but I understand.
No, you can't.
Yeah. And I think that's great. So what would be different from your communication and relationship building and openness with the animals versus someone that has probably heard of a animal behaviorist, behavior modification, to help with their animal?
I would say the difference between me and maybe an animal behaviorist is that I look at the whole, meaning it's not just the animal, it's the person, and then it's that energy exchange between the two. Because the minute you start a relationship with an animal, you start merging your energy with them. And that's super powerful. And I go into this part of it. So yes, I can do them separately, but this is equally as important. And I not only modify what's going on with the animal and bring up the truth of what's going on, because the animals talk to me. Mm-hmm. I also help the person. So it's kind of a whole package. And I would say that's the difference, instead of specifically dialing into just an animal. And hey, sometimes you need both. Sometimes you need one and not the other. It just depends on, every situation is different.
I agree with you. I agree. And it's dimensional. It's not one way. It's energy comes from all different areas, and we need to know where that's coming from, like you said, to deal with it and to move forward and understand that and recognize that. I would ask you, so how have your abilities in your practice over the last 25 years changed over time as you've become more educated and more aware of yourself? And how has your own wisdom increased?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I said earlier, when I first started in this field, I didn't have the confidence that I do now. So I don't want to say many times, but I certainly have times where I'll be sharing information and my client, whether it's the person or the animal, well, the person will say, "Oh no, that's not true." And I used to think, where did I go wrong here? Because honestly, Amy, I just get out of the way. And I really trust getting out of the way. So if somebody approaches me with that kind of feedback, I'm well aware that there's a block and they are not wanting to go beyond that block. So I hold the space. And I have developed that pretty powerfully over the years, and I have a tremendous amount of trust in that. So my trust and my faith and I mean my result over these years are really what helped me take it even deeper.
Do you have a preference working with horses or dogs or certain situations?
I mean, I love it all. I think having done it for as long as I have, I kind of like more of a challenge. And I think someone could say that in any profession. You want to just take it a little deeper, or I want to take it a little deeper, let's say.
Which allows you more growth and education of yourself and more experience.
That's correct. And speaking of growth, it truly is an inside job.
Oh, I imagine.
Yeah. So you can watch this, you can read that, and it's like, well, that's interesting. But in my line of work, it's just continuing to go deeper and peel for more truth. And that truth is not tangible. So that's a lot of trust.
Absolutely. So if myself or someone else, one of my clients, were to hire you, what would that process look like? If we don't live near you, do you pick up the phone? Is it Zoom? Or do you come to someone if it's in a reasonable time frame for driving? What does that look like?
Okay. Most of my clients I deal with on the phone.
Okay.
I have clients around the world. And one thing I learned, I'll never forget, the first person I dealt with on the other side of the planet, I don't know how this is going to work. Am I going to get answers? And it's like they were sitting right there. And so many of us have heard the expression, energy knows no bounds. And it is absolutely true. And it still kind of blows my mind. Like I have clients in 5 countries, and it's just like having this conversation right now.
I love that. That's
wonderful. I do too. Yeah, it's so powerful.
So you prefer phone over Zoom these days? Is that correct?
When I am dealing with an animal, I prefer phone. Okay. When I'm dealing with a person, I prefer Zoom, and I record the session with the person because I don't want people taking notes. And when I am working with an individual, we go really deep. Now I go deep with animals, but I don't care if the person's taking notes while we're on the phone because it's more about the animal, even though I might dial into them a little bit. It's really more about the animal and that relationship. So, that's kind of how I make that distinction. But if somebody wanted to do a Zoom for a session with their animal, I'm happy to do it.
Gotcha. Do you have any other things that you would like us to know about you? I'm so grateful that you took the time to be with me today to do this interview and that you were open to doing that. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Well, I would say in talking about the setting where you have a group, when I do clinics, I like to have between 6 and 8 people and their animals. And we do the circular setting. And I love doing these clinics because each animal, as you were saying, is individual, and that person is individual, and that relationship is individual. However, as I know you find in your clinics, the people watching the exchange going on learn from that. So it's really valuable. And when I start a clinic, I look around because I'm immediately picking up on the energy and what's going on. And I like to just ask if I may have an animal, whether they're on leash or a lead rope with a horse. And I will tend to start with the one who's a little more difficult. And I want people to really see the difference in what's going on with that person and their horse. And then when I just start working in the center of the group with that animal. And I love that because it really gets people's attention. It's like, oh. And then it's like, well, I want her to work with my dog. I want her to work with my horse. And as you say, each one is so individual and you just dial into different energy levels. And I call that clinic, and I love this, partnership leadership. And there's a partnership you have with your animal, but you have to have leadership and you learn how to have both. And I put leadership second because partnership really does play a bigger role once the leadership is in place.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, I'll look at them and I'll say, if it's a couple, they're having trouble with their puppy maybe, and puppies are a lot of work. It's not all cute, fluffy times, and they have
very challenging.
So then it causes the dynamics in the family to shift, and not everyone's as happy. And I say, hey, I don't do marriage counseling. I do have a bag full of wine, a stress ball, or Kleenex, whatever you need. I bring some humor into it, but it's amazing to see, like you said, if you can teach them to be calm. That's what I tell them. I said, all of you say you want to be an alpha dog. I'm like, you don't even know what an alpha dog is because you are barking so many commands. The dog can't even process what you're saying. Your body language is off. Let's calm down. Let's show confidence, be calm. You know what? If you guys dance as a couple, you have to communicate. You're not talking. You're using your body. It's a little bit of pressure coming back. It's feeling each other. And they all say, we don't dance. I'm like, I can tell.
Yeah.
So I love your style, your method, your intuitiveness to reading people and the animals. And I think it's fascinating. And I'm so glad that you were able to be here with us today. And I look forward to working with you in the future, whether we host a group setting, like you said, or that I can get more people to utilize your services and send them your way.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Amy. And I so appreciate and admire what you do. So thanks so much.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.